Hi everyone, Maria here, and welcome to Season 1 of GUTT Talks, GGUTT, a podcast focusing on business and tech for good, experience design, and gut feelings. How was the response of the market, and what did you learn from Flair football initially?
Yeah, so the response was good overall, I'd say. I guess I'd split things up into our user base and then the rest of the community. So as I mentioned, we built a user base of around 25,000 young football players in the UK and Ireland, and they were really engaged with the app. They would use it every week to track their stats and talk about their football matches. And outside of that, we built a really great community of investors, advisors, and also just a lot of friends and family as well who have really supported along the way. And they were really supportive as well of what we were doing. I guess across the last few years, we've had a few challenges, and this year in particular, things were kind of put to a grinding halt. And that really made us reflect on how we can take the learnings that we had from building Flair. I guess some of the key things were that we really learned how to build a team and to work together effectively. So we were a team of 6 working together, and we really learned to understand how to actually prioritize, how to make good decisions, and how to basically focus on what was most important when building the app. And that's something that we've kind of taken through to our next business.
Okay. And then came COVID, as you mentioned. This year was tough. What were the hurdles, and what was the trigger that made you pivot?
Yeah, good question. So a couple of really big hurdles. The first was that our app is all around people playing football, and overnight football was literally cancelled, and the usage of the app just absolutely fell off a cliff pretty much straight away. And we had to find a way to basically engage our user base and keep going as a business. The second big challenge was that we were right in the middle of a fundraising round. So we're raising investment from private investors, having meetings, several meetings scheduled within that month, in fact. And as soon as COVID hit, as you'd expect, a lot of investors became quite nervous about the climate, and investment also dried up. So we were basically in a position where nobody was using our app, and we were running out of money, and effectively we needed to find a way of surviving as a company. That was the moment when we started to think, what else could we do? Then fast forward a few months, George Floyd was killed, sadly. And it was around that time then my cousin and I were thinking, how can we do something about what's happening in the world when it comes to racial equality? Because we were 2 Black founders who were building a business, and we felt as if we had the skills that could actually help with some of the issues. So that was the point when we thought, let's pivot the direction of the company entirely. Let's shut down the app, and let's try and focus on essentially building a company that helps to tackle some of the issues when it comes to racial equality.
Okay, so it's like you could give an example or lead in that sense, because you kind of can relate to it, but you're also people who can relate to you, even if you didn't or have any sort of issues, but you can talk about it, and you're in a good position to talk about it. Yeah. Before I jump into that, I want to ask you, because we mentioned the pivot, and you said, everything that's been happening around COVID and George Floyd and all of that kind of triggered your decision. Did you follow your gut feeling in going ahead and making this decision? I guess we're just into this moment to talk about gut feelings, and how did that affect you?
Yeah, massively. We were in a place where we had so many different choices of what to do. And I guess the first few weeks were really stressful because it was basically panicking that everything was kind of shutting down. And we really had to trust in our gut to figure out what is the right path. Of course, we just speak to people within our network. So we consulted with friends, our investors, our community, and that was an important part of making the decisions that we did make. But ultimately, we didn't know what the world was going to look like. we had to make a bet on several things. So, for example, we made the bet that football wasn't going to return within the coming months. And it turns out that that was the case. And even now, football returned within the youth landscape, but very quickly it was then closed down again. So that was an example of us having to use our gut to figure out, do we think we can build a business within the football industry, or do we think that it's going to be too unstable over the next few months? And we had to make a decision on that without knowing. And there were loads of other cases like that where we had to really make choices without having enough information. But ultimately, sometimes, especially in business, you need to act fast in order to make progress, and you can't have all the data all the time. So we just felt we had to make the best decision with the information we had at hand.